Hopefully I wasn't too forceful with my point here, but I feel like the point kind of required some force. I want you to ask yourself, do you even like the Mona Lisa? Madame Bovary? I liked some of it. Tolstoy hated Shakespeare. I want to look at art, give it my attention and my focus, and wait for it to do something to me. And if it doesn't, I want to trust that. My writing isn't narrowing towards this eventual point that I can't seem to escape from. It's going further and further and further away from all the conventions that I've always wanted to get away from. If you don't understand something, if it doesn't hit for you, there's nothing wrong with you. That's your intuition saying, listen to me, trust me, and follow me wherever I go. Is this good? I think this is good. I figured this video might receive some criticism, so I developed my title accordingly. But I want to start with a story. 5 years ago, I heard something that has stuck with me ever since. There was an editor named Gian from Tyrant Books. And if you don't know Gian, he was a person who had developed an intuition and a sense of personal artistic experience and proved it again and again and again that they saw things outside of convention based on their own aesthetic intuition. So I had a lot of trust for Gian, for the late Gian. But in this interview, and I just barely caught it, basically said that as a writer, what you read is what you write. His point was that if you want to write like no one else writes, then you should read like no one else reads, which means a lot of things. And this is what I want to talk about in the video: how to go beyond a deferential stance towards the widely accepted and canonized great works, whether classics or contemporary. I feel like Gian was saying, hold off on thinking something's great because everyone else thinks it's great. Just pause on that. Have some skepticism and try it and see if it hits you. And if it doesn't, trust that it doesn't. In this message too was that if you read the same things that everyone else reads, you're going to produce and write the same thing that everyone else writes. In other words, he was saying your reading is your writing. I've let that sit with me for 5-6 years now, and it has totally altered the way and shaped the way I read, the way I write, the way I approach looking at art, and that's what I want to talk about today. All right, so I want you to ask yourself, well, don't ask yourself anything. I want you to put in mind a TJ Maxx, walking into a TJ Maxx. And the shelves are kind of half full. There's clothing that's like pulled off the rack. There's clothing that's in the wrong section. There's like weird bags of chips. There are people that are carrying items in their cart and then like a couple minutes later deciding they don't really want them. When we go into a TJ Maxx, we don't revere or have any sort of preconceived idea about the products that we're looking at being excellent, or even if we don't like them, maybe we should be liking them. No, you pick shit up, you look at it, you're like, this fucking sucks, you know? Like, you're holding the products, you're looking at them, you don't have any preconceived notion, you're saying, speak to me or don't, make me buy you or not. And then think about going to see the Mona Lisa. People are already going in with the sense that this is the greatest piece of art, one of the greatest pieces of art in human history, and the way they look at it is completely colored by that. But I want to ask, do you even like the Mona Lisa? Does it speak to you in any way? If you were to look at it undisturbed for an hour, would you feel anything? I don't know. Do I even like the Mona Lisa? I don't think so. That's exactly what I'm talking about with developing an aesthetic intuition. For me, it involves taking the classics with a huge grain of salt. There are many classics that I've read some and thought, well, I don't know, not for me. Madame Bovary, I liked some of it and then I got bored. Crime and Punishment, I could kind of see it coming. And on the other hand, I'm halfway through Anna Karenina, and probably 95% of that book is knockout perfect for me. So it's not that I don't understand classic literature. It's that I trust when I don't like something and I don't have to force myself to see it in the way that Harold Bloom sees it. If I don't have to stretch, if I don't have to like work and exercise to force myself to see it the way that other people have seen it as something to be revered, if I just trust that intuition that I have that this maybe isn't for me, and I follow that towards what does appeal to me, my reading life is going to be different than anyone else's. The more I trust that intuition, the more I trust my gut that says, yeah, this book, everyone says it's really good, but I don't really like it. So I take a massive grain of salt with all classics. Anything that is canonized or someone recommends to me, I take with a massive grain of salt. I can actually trust and exercise that force in me that says, I'm not so sure about this. And I can follow it when it finds something that does click for it, especially if that's something that isn't recommended, that isn't canonized, that I haven't heard people talking about. That's when I really want to trust what I'm feeling towards a piece of art or a book, is when this comes not recommended. I haven't heard of this writer. I don't know anything about this book, and there's something in it that's very appealing to me. That's when the alarm bells are going off. And there's another way I go about developing this reading that no one else has done, and it's very simple. If I like a book, it can be, a super popular book and one that's very lauded, like take Knausgaard's My Struggle, for example. And then I listen to that author mention, sometimes even in the book, what their influences are. Knausgaard, when I was reading this book, he talked about Peter Handke's something Dream. I can't remember. It's got a really sad title. He talked about Peter Handke, and then Peter Handke is contemporary with Annie Ernaux, and Annie Ernaux is writing in a similar vein as W.G. Sebald. Sebald is a big influence of John D'Agata. John D'Agata has written about the origins of the essay, and this essay that he really liked from Thomas Brown called Urn Burial, which was written in 1658. And from Urn Burial, somehow I'm reading Whaling Journals by Peleg Folger from the 18th century. That's what I'm talking about. It's following the thread of influences and connections from my struggle, which everyone pretty much knows about and has at least thought about reading, to Peleg Folger's Whaling Journals. That is how one can trust their aesthetic intuition and get them into a place that they've never been before and very few people are reading. I've done this exact same thing, following my intuition through my dictator phase, through my journal phase, through my slim European novel phase, through my suspect reading phase. Followed all of these different threads to develop an aesthetic that no one else has. Maybe people have elements of it, but the totality, no one else has but me. Over a year ago, I was starting on a second draft of my novel, and I wanted desperately to get out of this form and this way of writing that I could see so clearly when I was reading and identify what this form was. But as I was writing and editing especially, I feel like my writing always fell back into this convention that I really didn't like. That was one of my goals for this second draft. And as I was going, I found myself just funneling into that same place again. I started with Kafka's The Metamorphosis as like my comp. I was like increasingly despairing while I watched my writing just funnel into this unadventurous place that wasn't any good, that was like everything else that I didn't want to be. And I just watched myself narrow and narrow and narrow in on this track that I wanted to get away from. And I had all this despair. And then I picked up a book that I remember I bought years before It was like $5 at a used bookstore. It had a really cool cover. It had a few sentences that really struck me, and I bought it, put it away. Fast forward 2 years later, I'm in despair over this draft, and I pick up this book, and the sentences and the subject just blows me away. I think about Gian, and I think about another quote that I've always loved. I think David Shields stole it from another person who stole it from another person, but it's the writer is a reader moved to emulation. Anyway, I realized there is a whole language here. There is something, I'm onto something here with this reading. And it has opened up to me. Now I'm a year down the track. I've already drafted based on this subject that was so clear and blatant and in front of my face how literary and powerful it was, and no one else had touched it that I could find in this way. Fast forward over a year, I've written a second draft. I'm deep into working the third draft. I've got, 30 to 40 pieces of research material all in this subject. I'm developing my own style that kind of incorporates this, and I'm in a totally different creative place that doesn't resemble any of those conventions that I was trying to get away from so bad. My writing isn't narrowing towards this eventual point that I can't seem to escape from. It's going further and further and further away from all the conventions that I've always wanted to get away from. And how has it done that? It's done that through what I've been reading, and even more so my approach to reading and my developing and trust of my aesthetic intuition. All the times I said, no, I don't really like this, to something that was lauded and canonized, to something classic or contemporary that everyone says, this is the book, you gotta read it. The more I pick up a book that is a bestseller and flip through a couple pages and find nothing in it that appeals to me and trust that, and the more that I pick up books that I've never heard of, on subjects I've never heard of, by writers I've never heard of, that have something that just clicks and appeals to me, even if it's small, and I trust that, that's how I have wound up in a completely different place in my writing life, in my artistic life. And those are the ways that I've done it, by handling art, by picking it up, by putting it in my shopping cart for a little bit and casting it aside and saying, you know what, it's not for me. By not having this deferential attitude to the Mona Lisa that I don't even actually like. I want to look at art, give it my attention and my focus, and wait for it to do something to me. And if it doesn't, I want to trust that. Tolstoy hated Shakespeare. He wrote about how much he hated Shakespeare. I'm talking about trusting instead of approaching a piece of art with, well, everyone says I should like it, so I'm going to force myself to like it or get through it. And if I don't understand it, then there's something wrong with me. That's wrong. If you don't understand something, if it doesn't hit for you, there's nothing wrong with you. That's your intuition saying, listen to me, trust me, and follow me wherever I go. And I promise you, I will lead you outside of convention. I'll lead you to places that no one else has gone. And if you read like this, you're going to write like this. That's what I'm talking about. So if you want to start down this path, I feel like this YouTube channel is a good place to do it. We've got a once a month book club where we don't we're not reading whaling journals. In other words, we're not at the end point of a very specific and narrow aesthetic journey, but we're at the beginning or maybe the midpoint of an aesthetic journey that can lead you in directions. If you listen to your intuition about the books that we're reading, they can lead you in a direction that is very unique to your own taste and your own gut. This month, we've got on March 31st, on Monday, we've got a live stream at 2:30 p.m. Universal Time, UTC, which is 7:30 a.m. Pacific, 8:30 Mountain, 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern Time. Live stream, we're talking about Annie Ernaux's Exteriors. It's by a Nobel Prize winner, but it's a very specific kind of book, and it could lead you in a direction that maybe you've never gone down before. And you could hate it, and I would trust that if you do hate it, and see where that hating of the book leads you. The book club on this channel can help with that. Also on this channel, I stream Write With Me sessions 5 times a week to increase our accountability and our daily writing practice. So 2 hours a day, 5 days a week at 2:30 p.m. UTC, which is also 7:30 Pacific, 8:30 Mountain, 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern Time. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 2 hours a day at 2:30 p.m. UTC. We have a book club. We have the 5 times a week streams, and those are concrete ways that I think you can develop your aesthetic intuition and use this channel as a trampoline, as a platform to get you into heights and into places that no one else is touching. Hopefully I wasn't too forceful with this video, with my point here, but I feel like the point kind of required some force. But anyway, have a good day.